know, that you hear him, that you hear what he's saying, and that you agree. And if you're confused, you can even do the, oh, what was that all about? Emoji. So we welcome you. Looks like Nordine and Alex. Am I pronouncing that right? And Yvette, we welcome you. Stay engaged, be engaged, and learn what you can learn from this man who is very knowledgeable in what he's going to be speaking to. So Lisa, I'll let you speak, and then I'm gonna, once Jim starts, I'm just gonna go off camera. I won't be laying down though. I might have my head like this. I won't be laying down.
Okay, I'm Lisa Twilley. I'm the director of the Women's Business Center here at Maryland Capital Enterprises. And like Ann said, we service the Eastern Shore of Maryland. We service Baltimore County and Baltimore City and Anne Arundel County. So we do overlap with Baltimore City. Our services are the same. We do business consulting, marketing consulting. We do training classes such as this. We also do startup loans here, small business loans. So if anybody needs anything from us, please reach out. I'm going to put my contact information in the chat, which will have my email, phone number, and our new website. We have a new Women's Business Center website that we're very excited about. But we're just very thankful that Jim Peterson is here. Jim is the Vice President and Business Banking Relationship Manager at M&T Bank. And we love to partner with one of our sponsors. M&T Bank has always been a sponsor for us for different events, and we appreciate that relationship. And we thank you, Jim, for being here. I'm going to let you tell a little bit more about yourself and take it away.
All right. Well, thank you, ladies. Happy to be here. And thank you for all of those who have joined us. I'm Jim Peterson, as was stated, and I'm currently with M&T Bank, but I'm a former business owner. I'm a serial entrepreneur, recovering serial entrepreneur, trying to keep my day job and stay out of them streets with them businesses. My wife likes it that way. But I had a business that I moved down to Baltimore in 1997. So I had a manufacturing plant in PA, moved it down here in 97, grew that business to a pretty substantial size. We had over 20 people working for us over on Russell Street. And we were able to sell that in 2011. I've been there, whatever you're going through, I've been there. I've had those nights when you're trying to figure out how to pay payroll and how to hire people and all the issues that you're going through, starting up, trying to get funds, writing business plans, all that stuff. I've been there. So while I'm a banker these days and I can help you on the funding and financial side, I know exactly what your needs are. I know what you're going through. And you can ask me almost anything. The benefit that I bring to my clients is that I'm not just here to help you with financing. I'm happy to do that. But I can also answer almost any other questions that you have. And if I can't, I know some folks who can. I know a lot of people been around Baltimore for quite some time. And I can connect you with folks that can get answers for you. What I'd like to say is that answers are easy, right? Coming up with the right question to ask is the hard part. And that leads me to a participation. As Ann mentioned today, I don't want to just sit here and talk to you guys today. I know you might be working, you might be doing some other things and you're looking for some good information, but I need some feedback from you, right? More than an emoji. If you want to put it in the chat, that's fine. But I need to know who you are and what you're trying to do. That way I can kind of cater the presentation to you because we're here for you. Right. What's most important is that you get your questions answered. I'm not a PowerPoint master. So if you came here looking for, bells and whistles and things shooting in and out and music, this is not it. This is not the one for you. I'm here to share some information, how to get your hobby to a side hustle and answer the questions that you have. So I'm here for you. And I'd love for you guys to participate. So you're not just sitting there listening to me for an hour. So I can't always see, I'm going to start sharing my screen in a minute and I can't always see the chat. So I'm going to ask that Lisa and Ann, you guys help me with the chat. If a question comes up, just jump in. And again, don't wait till the end. I'll be asking from time to time if you have any questions, but you don't have to wait till the end. There will be a section at the end for questions, but If I touch on something and you want to know more about it, or if you have a question, just put it in the chat or jump in, turn your mic on, and let's talk. But first, I'd like to know who you are and what you do. So if we have a small group, we have time. So if you could just give me an idea very briefly of who you are, what you're trying to do, or the name of your company, or what industry you're in, or just a little something about you. Would you please? We can start with Nordine. Crafting business. Great, great.
Hello.
All right. Wonderful. Thank you, Nordine, for joining us today. How about Alexis?
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm an interior designer and landscape designer, and I have a side hustle that I'd like to go into a bigger business. I'm addicted to fabric and I make custom French pillowcases. So I need a place to put my addiction.
Okay, all right. Well, you're going to need our next, you can please put on your calendar our next workshop. But this is hobby to a side hustle. The next workshop would be side hustle to a business. So we're going to walk through the preliminary part of what you're trying to do today, but please look out for our next workshop as well. Yvette.
Hi,
Hello there.
everyone. Hello, hello. Yes, my business is event planning. I have an event planning services that I want to try to figure out how to pivot that, because due to COVID and the way that we were branding it was for a larger scale, like big weddings and things of that nature. And not much of that is happening right now. So I'm here just to figure out how can I pivot that in the event planning industry.
Okay. And what I find a lot of times, and the reasons why we do these workshops, is that, we want people to understand what this is really going to take. If you're doing it as pretty much as a hobby right now, it's not very formal. It's a lot of work turning businesses into a side hustle, and then turning a side hustle into a business. And there may be some things that you haven't thought about. So hopefully I'll touch on some of those things today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we can get this started. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, it looks good.
Yes.
We're good? All
Yeah.
right, great. So this is how to turn your hobby into a side hustle. Again, I'm Jim Peterson with M&T Bank. So our agenda for today is we're going to go through some definitions, right? We're going to talk about exactly what is a hobby and what is a side hustle, and why you would want to turn your hobby into a side hustle. All right, again, some of those things we're going to go through you may not have thought of. So we're going to try to cover all the things involved, and sometimes people say, you know what, that's a lot. I didn't think of that, and maybe I don't want to do that. So we're going to talk about the whys. We're going to talk about how to do what we're talking about doing. Then we're going to talk about when. When is a good time? When should you do this? When is it the best time for you to turn this hobby into a side hustle? We're going to have time for questions. And then again, you don't have to wait till the questions, but we will have time for questions at the end. And then we're going to have a test, because there's always a test, right? Whenever I do a workshop, there's going to be a test. I want to make sure that you're learning something. That's why we do these, right? So it's not a hard test, but be prepared. There will be a test. All right, so let's get into some definitions. We're going to talk about hobby and side hustle. So let's start with a hobby. A hobby is an activity that's done regularly in one's leisure time or pleasure, right? So this is something you're going to do after your day job. After work or on weekends, this is something that you typically love to do. People have hobbies because they love to do what it is that they're doing. If you're a crafter, right, you're obviously good at whatever you're doing. You love doing what you're doing. And this is something that you would do whether you're being paid or not, right? If you like doing design, you're going to design because there's something in you that says, I want to design. You're an artist. You want to express yourself. Typically, designers are very creative people. and have a need to express themselves so that, this is something that they do. And if you can get paid for it, hey, that's why you might want to turn it into a side hustle. Right. Same thing with event planning. You must either be good at it or you get a knack for it. And you just love to do it. You love the decorations, you love the planning, you love making people happy. Right. I'm a basketball nut. Been playing basketball all my life, coach basketball. I would play basketball whether somebody paid me or not. And nobody ever paid me to play, but I still play. And so that's what a hobby is. That's my hobby. That's what I do to stay in shape. That's what I do because I love it. I'm not one of those people who's just going to go run around the block or find a track and run around the track. I cannot do that. Basketball is the only thing that gets my blood pumping, gets me moving. So if you have something like that for you, and somebody decided that, hey, I like what you're doing, and I want to pay you for it, then you might want to consider turning your hobby into a side hustle. And that brings us to a side hustle. Side hustle is work done in addition to your full-time job that you get paid for, right? And the key word here is work. This is work, not a hobby. When you do something for someone else, it's work. When you do it on your own time, it's a hobby. So what you're doing is really creating another job for yourself. Right. And that right there, when people hear that, they're like, no, it's just something I love to do. And people are paying, that's a job. If somebody's paying you for it, it's another job. And when you look at it that way, some people say, well, I don't really want another job. Well, then you may not want a side hustle. Right. And you definitely don't want a business because that's really another job. So these are some of the things you need to think about. That's what side hustle and hobby is. And if you're working a full-time job, you need to think about these things because now it's not just for you, it's for somebody else. All right, so why? Before we get into why you want to turn your hobby into a side hustle, anybody have any questions? Anything yet? All right, no questions. We're going to move into why. Why would you want to turn your hobby into a side hustle? And we start with because you love it, right? You really have to love this. I know it's your hobby and you do it all the time, but when you have to do it for somebody else, you have to love doing it because it's hard. That means now there's going to be some demands. People are going to want it on time. People are going to want it a certain way. You have to really love what you're doing to be able to stick with this, right? It's easy when it's just you, but you have to really, really like what you're doing when somebody else says, make one for me, or plan my event, or design my home or my yard. These things, it takes a different turn when you have to do it. And I want it in 5 days, or I want it by the end of the week, or I want it tomorrow. It's different. Again, it's work. Number two is because other people love it, right? And I don't mean your family. I hear so many people say, well, my family loves my cooking, so I'm going to open a restaurant. No, there's a long way from your family loving your food and opening a restaurant, right? It's a long way. So you have to be sure that other people love what you're doing and they love it enough to pay you for it. Right? Pay you enough to make it worth your while to keep doing it. All right. So in order to find out how you do that, you need to do some surveys. You need to find yourself a focus group. And I don't mean your family and your friends. Find some people that you don't know and run the idea by them. If you're a designer, run these ideas by some folks that don't know you, that don't love you, and that aren't worried about hurting your feelings. Right? Do you think I have the skills to turn this into something that somebody would pay me for? Do you like my designs? Do you like my crafts? This is something that you would pay for. And if so, how much? Do surveys, do a Facebook survey. You can do surveys on Facebook now and Instagram. right? Do a survey of people that you don't necessarily know. I'm not a big fan of Facebook surveys because again, that's people who know and like you typically. But they do serve a purpose. You get some idea from Facebook survey, and at least you've done something outside of your own home. You've got some opinions from some other folks. So you need to make sure that other people love what you're doing. Number 3 is because what you need is readily available consistently, right? So you don't want to start a business where what you need is hard to get, or what you need is, it makes a unique business. If you're doing something that nobody else can do, that's awesome. But what happens when somebody says, hey, I want to pay you to provide this product and you can't get it, right? So you need to make sure that everything that you need to keep doing what you're doing is readily available. I know a young man who made, who still does, he still makes scarves out of alpaca, right? Alpaca wool, right? But he only goes to Peru once a year. And when he comes back with all this wool, and he makes these scarves, and people love them and pay them pay him very well for this. But he can only go once a year, and once they're gone, right? So that's not really a business. It's more like a hobby, because he can do it when he can do it. He loves doing it, and he only does so much. And he's not really, when I spoke with him, he's not really sure he wants to do more than what he's doing, right? He has a full-time job, obviously. And he doesn't really want to take the next step. He's happy having it as something that somebody will pay him for, right? But you have to have this material readily available, because when it's gone, if the next person that comes back and says, hey, I want one of those scarves, he has to say, well, you've got to wait till next year. I can't provide that for you because I can't get what I need readily available, right? So I was in Cameroon a couple of years ago. And I met a young man. He was a tailor over there. In fact, he came highly recommended. I'm a suit guy. Typically, if you see me outside of the office, I typically always wear a suit. I like nice suits. So they recommend. My friend said, "Hey, I know you like nice suits. Let me go introduce you to this guy." So met this guy. This guy is over there, very highly skilled. He's making men's suits, 3-piece suits for between $40 and $80. Right. This guy was awesome. So immediately, if you know me, I'm thinking, how am I going to turn this into a business? How can I get these suits to the States and sell these things? Right. So I sat down and talked to him. And number one, I needed an interpreter because he only spoke French. Now, I took 4 years of French myself, so I could muddle through some things, but I can't have a conversation with somebody. So I needed an interpreter. That was number one. Number two, he didn't have a phone. People in Yaoundé, Cameroon don't have phones like we have phones, right? Phones are very expensive and they don't make much money. And if this guy's happy making a 3-piece suit for $40, you can understand that, he can't afford a cell phone bill for $100 a month, right? So he didn't have a phone. So I would have no way of contacting this guy. I would have to get in touch with my friend, and then my friend would have to get in touch with him the next time he was in the area, and you can see where that's an issue. All right, they didn't have Wi-Fi in the area. Number three, no Wi-Fi. Right, so I can't reach him on Snapchat, WhatsApp. Can't reach him through email. There's no email. So you can see where the trouble lies. Not only that, where he lived, there was no post office, there was no mail delivery, and UPS and FedEx was hit or miss. They may or may not come. So you can see it was a great idea to start, right? And I could have ran with it. In fact, in my head, I did. I had already had a website built and knew how I was going to market it, and knew what I was going to sell them for, my profit. I broke it all down in my head. But once you really take a good look at it, if what you need to provide your service or product isn't readily available, then you might not want to think about turning that into a business. Right. So number 4, you don't mind doing it for someone else. And we talked about this in number 2, right? will you do this? Well, other people love it, and won't you mind doing it for somebody else? So if you don't mind working for somebody else, because again, it's work, right? Possibly doing what you do in a different way, whatever crafts you make, right? Again, comes from the heart and your mind, and you put your soul into it, and you present it to someone, they say, well, I like that, but why didn't you put the flower over here? Why didn't you do it that way? And see, a lot of creatives, it sounds like we have creatives on the line here. You guys are creative. You don't like people telling you what to do, right? So you have to have thick skin. You have to be able to put up with people saying, well, I like what you're doing, but I want you to do it this way, right? Now they're paying you. So you can't argue with them if you want them to pay you for your services or your product. So you have to be comfortable with somebody else telling you how to do it. And again, it's another job. You're working for somebody else. So now you just created another boss. People like to say, well, I work for myself. Nobody works for themselves. You work for your customer, right? You either work for your employer or you work for your customer. So you're always working for somebody. And your customer becomes your boss. So if you don't mind doing it for somebody else, then you're in good shape. So number 5, because you can make a profit, right? And that's what business is all about. You go into business to make a profit. So if you're going to turn this into a side hustle, you have to be able to make money. When it's a hobby, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter if you make money or not, because you love it so much, you'll do it whether you make money or not. I play basketball, nobody pays me, never made a dime over playing basketball, but I still play, right? I'm sure as a designer, you're still going to design. As a craft maker, you're still going to make crafts. As an event planner, you're still going to do events for your family and children and auntie and whatever's going on in the family. You're probably the one. If somebody's getting married, oh, we need to call her because that's what she does. If she loves to do, we can't afford to pay her, but that's her thing. So we're going to ask her if she wants to do it, and you'll probably do it because that's what you do, right? But if this is a side hustle, now this is someone else telling you what they need from you, whether it's your product or service. They're telling you how they want it, when they want it, and you have to be able to accommodate them, right? And you have to make sure that you're making money, right? It doesn't make sense to do these things if you're not making money. If they don't make dollars, it don't make sense. That's what I like to say. Right. So in order to figure out whether you're making money or not, we use something called the cost plus model. And that cost plus model means that whatever material you need, whatever labor you need, and when I say labor, I don't mean just you. I mean, what would it cost if you had to pay somebody else? Right. A lot of us say, well, I make baskets. I know a woman who makes these baskets, and she makes some beautiful baskets. Right. So, but she spends months making these baskets. And what happens is by the time she's ready to present these, usually near the end of the year, Thanksgiving and Christmas is when she sells it. She spends all year making these baskets, and she puts hours and hours and hours. She drives all over the place, finding different things to put into these baskets. And then when it's time, the baskets are made, it's time to sell them. She sits down and she says, well, what would people pay for these baskets, right? She does it backwards, and a lot of people do it this way. So this is you. I'm not picking on you. I'm just explaining that this is how a lot of people do it. So she looks at her baskets and she says, well, it's a church bazaar that I'm going to, and people probably will only be able to pay $25 for these baskets. So I'm going to charge $25. But if you look at these baskets, and some of these are hand woven. I mean, she didn't go buy a basket and put stuff in. She made the basket. That basket itself is worth more than $25, right? The hours that it takes to build this basket and then to drive all over the place. You're talking about your time, you're talking about gas, you're talking about going in and out of stores, and then the cost of the things that she's putting in this basket. You have to get your money back. She really only does this because she loves it. It is definitely not a business for her. It's not really a side hustle because she is not making a profit. She is just giving baskets away out of the kindness of her heart because she is not making money. right? So you have to make sure you make money. You put some kind of value on labor. Again, not your labor, but what you would have to pay somebody else to do what it is you're doing. And then marketing, right? You have to factor in the cost of marketing. When we go through cost analysis and if we were to work on building a budget for yourself, we talk about something called CAC, customer acquisition costs. What does it cost you to get a customer, right? And this doesn't have to be, I mean, it can go from one end to the other, right? Big companies, they spend a lot of time and effort in figuring this out because they're doing a lot of marketing. They're doing TV shows and a lot of online marketing, digital advertising, et cetera. And based on the number, so what you do is you take the amount of money you spend, divide that by the number of customers you get, right? And that's your customer acquisition cost. So it can be very simple. If you're going to a church bazaar and it costs you $100 to get a table at this church bazaar, and you get one customer, your cost of acquisition is not only that $100 it costs you to be in that show, but the gas it took for you to get there, the time, your labor to work that table, the time you spent there, all that cost is your cost of acquisition, right? So if in total it costs you $220 to be at that show for that weekend, and you got one customer, then your cost of acquisition, your CAC is $220, right? That's what it costs you to get that one customer. So you really have to think about that. And you need to get your money back, right? I used to do those church bazaars and flea markets and things like that before I knew any of this. And I was really, it was a hobby for me because I certainly wasn't making any money. Yeah, I came home at the end of the day and I had a couple $100 in my pocket. But when I think about all the time and effort, because I was building, one of the first stands I had was I was building custom clocks out of wood. Right, so I would make these clocks, and it would take me weeks and weeks and weeks, and I get a new clock, and I put it on the table. You know, when I was out there selling, but I put hours into these clocks and a lot of effort, and a lot of sweat. And what I was charging for the clocks is what I could charge at the place where I was selling them, and I never really got my money back. But it felt good to come home with a couple dollars in your pocket, and but it really wasn't a good side hustle or a good business. But it was something I love to do. So, it's not bad. And there's nothing wrong with that. Hobbies are great. But if it's going to be a side hustle or business, you have to make money. You want to factor in your packaging, right? If you're putting these in a bag, you got to add that to your costs. If you're putting these into some kind of box, you got to add that in your costs. If it's tissue paper, however you're packaging these products, you got to factor that in. A lot of people forget about that. If it's in a bottle, then you have to factor in that cost. If you're baking a cake, you need to break this down. Everything has a cost, right? You need to know how much flour is in that cake and how much it costs you. How many eggs are in there? How much do the eggs cost you, right? Everything, the icing, etc. You need to know exactly how much stuff costs. That's your cost plus mile. Factor everything in: time, travel, etc. So those are the 5 things on why you would want to turn your hobby into a side hustle. Any questions there? Anything on why? All right, we're going to get into how. How do you turn your side hustle into, how do you turn your hobby into a side hustle? All right. So here's the how. Number 1, you're going to create a business plan. Right? And the business plan doesn't have to be the biggest, greatest plan ever. In fact, those of us who read business plans all the time, we hate a 40-page business plan. All right, because we're not going to read it. We're going to put it over here to the side, and we'll put it in the I'll get to it later pot. All right, so give me a nice, clear executive summary. That's the first section of your business plan. That's going to explain everything that's in your plan. And that needs to read like the intro to a book. Right? When I read that, it's got to make me want to read the rest of it. Again, you got 40 pages. And if you can't hook me on that first page, your executive summary, then I'm not going to read those 40 pages. Right. I need an agenda. I need to know exactly where to find what I need to find. And I need a good executive summary that's going to hook me and say, yeah, this is something I want to read. Right. So you need a good executive summary. And what a lot of people are using these days is something called a business model canvas. That's much simpler. You still need a business plan because that's going to be your roadmap on how to run your business. Right. But as an intro, you could use a business model canvas. That's what a lot of people are doing these days. It's a great way of expressing exactly what it is, what value you add. Again, if you're in business or if you're creating a side hustle, you should be solving some kind of problem. Right. So the business model canvas helps you explain what that problem is, how your value add will help, and why your customers need what you're doing. Right. It's a 9-box, 1-pager that people can look at and see exactly what it is you're trying to do and what makes you special. It's kind of like a capability statement. If any of you have done any government contracting or thinking about doing government contracting, what they're going to ask you for, the procurement officer is going to ask you for a capability statement, right? It shows who you are, what you can do, what you've done in the past, what you're able to do, how you do it, what's special about you, all those things is what people want to see when it's time for you to promote your business. Right. So number 2 is there a market for what you're trying to do? Right. A lot of people have some great ideas, but if there isn't somebody who's going to pay you for it, again, it's just a hobby. You can have a hobby and maybe you're a fisherman, the clip art. In the beginning, when I explained what a hobby is, I showed a clip art of a guy who likes to fish. All right, there's a lot of people who like to fish. A lot of people are very good at fishing, right? But if you wanted to turn it into a side hustle, how many people are actually going to pay them for their fish, right? There's nobody who, if you can go to a supermarket and buy fish, the chances are that it'd be very slim that people would pay you for the fish that you're going to bring home, right? So it has to be a market, it has to be a sizable market. So you have to evaluate that. Who's going to buy your product? Would anybody buy your product? And how many people will buy your product? It's something that, again, in these business terms, we call it TAM, T-A-M, total addressable market. You have to figure out what the total addressable market is, and then how you're going to reach that market. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, who's the competition? Right, a lot of people like to go into spaces where they think there's no competition, but if there's no competition, there's probably no market. Right, when Burger King came on the scene, they didn't say, well, we're not going to sell burgers and fries and milkshakes because McDonald's is already doing it. No, they said, well, we're just going to do it a little different. They got the grill, we got flame broil. Right, so you can make it bigger and better. It's not bad if there's competition. Actually, it's good because that means there's a market. You just have to find a way to differentiate yourself from who's already doing it. Right, so you need to know who that competition is. You need to know everything about that. How do they operate? Right, because they're out there, whether they're large or small. How much money they're making? Who are their customers? Right, get to know their customers. Because your first customers may be their customers, right? Find out what they're doing and how they're doing it and how you can do it better, right? Your first customers will probably be their customers, or at least they'll be interested. They like burgers and you're selling burgers and they're already buying from McDonald's and you're now Burger King. You might want to at least try it, right? So you need to know what they're doing so that you can compete against them. If you do have competitors, I don't know how many people come to me and say, well, I make the best food in the world, so I don't have any competitors. Nobody makes fried chicken like me. Nobody bakes cakes like me, right? Nobody catches fish like me. I catch the best fish. Probably not, right? Probably not. No matter what you're selling these days, you have competition. You have a lot of competition because Amazon sells everything. Amazon sells absolutely everything, and people can go on a website and order it and have it next day, right? So you have to know what's out there, know who your competition is, and how you're going to compete against them. So that's number 3, competition. Get to know who the competition is. Number 4, Do you have the time? Right? Can you consistently dedicate the time to run this side hustle? How much time do you actually have after work? How much time do you actually have on the weekends to run this side hustle? Right? Will you be able to do this comfortably? Will you be happy giving up your time? You worked all day. You might be tired at night. And it's okay, again, when it's your hobby, you do it or not do it, right? It doesn't really matter. But if somebody's paying you, then they're gonna say, hey, I'm paying you for this. I want this by Friday. And you have to get that work done. You have to provide that service. You have to make that product, right? So you got to get it done. Are you going to be comfortable with that? Giving up your time to run this other business, to do this other job? Again, side hustle is a job. So that's number 4. You know, are you going to have the time? Number 5 is, who is your target customer? So we talked about the competition in number 3 and who their customers might be. You need to know who your customer is. Whatever you're making or whatever you're doing, take some time and figure out who your target audience is, right? You need to know how old they are. You need to know where they live. You need to know how they live. You need to know where they shop, how they shop, what their education is, their unemployment, who they work for, where they work, what they like, what they dislike, who's in their social circles, right? What's their political affiliation? What's their faith? What's their race? And you need to know this information. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to put it in your advertising, right? We don't want to exploit anyone, but you need to know. Because in order for you to attract these customers and continually attract these customers, you have to approach them, you have to meet them where they are, right? If they're one particular political affiliation, you have to know how to approach that person, right? And not get on the bad side of them when you're trying to sell them something, right? If they're a particular religious faith, you don't want to approach them in a wrong way that would turn them off or offend them, right? Their particular race. You need to know these things and understand who your customer is and how to sell to them. All right, so that's very important. And that brings us to number 6. How are you going to reach these people? Once you figure out who they are, how are you going to reach them, right? You know what their likes and dislikes are. You know their affiliations. You know where they live. You know how much they probably can afford because you know where they work and how much money they make, right? You really have to get to know these things. Now you got to figure out what tools are you going to use to approach them, right? Are they well educated? Does that mean that you can reach them through digital advertising? Because more than likely they have a computer and they spend some time at least on the internet, right? Are they not very sophisticated where they listen to the radio, right? They do a lot of traveling maybe, and they're in the car, they listen to more radio. You might want to do some radio advertisement to reach that audience, right? If they watch a lot of television, you might want to use television to reach that audience, right? So you need to know a lot about them and then come up with the tools to be able to reach that audience and figure out how much will it cost to reach that audience. We talked about CAC a little earlier, customer acquisition costs. How much is it going to cost you to reach that audience? You got to figure all that out. And it's not easy. And sometimes it can take a lot of time, and a lot of people don't want to take the time. They want to start a business now. You know, they want to start a side hustle now. They want to start making money now. But it'd be much more prudent for you to figure these things out before you get started. And that brings us to number 7, which is create a budget, right? Include everything that's going to take, you know, your packaging, where you're going to sell, how you're going to sell. Tally all that up. And in your business plan, there needs to be a budget, right? There needs to be a budget for how much you need. I don't know how many business plans that I've read. They come to me at the bank and say, I want to borrow some money. Here's my business plan. I read the whole plan and I say, I still don't know how much money you need. All right. You told me everything I need to know about you and where you grew up and where you were born and how great you are. But I still don't know where you're going. I know where you are. I know who you are. I don't know where you're going, and I don't know how much money you need. Right? That's very important. There must be a budget in there. You need to be able to express how much money you need to do what it is you're going to do, and exactly what you're going to do with it, right? And one of the things that a lot of people forget when they're putting together their budget, we talked about packaging, we talked about your labor, and we talked about time and venue and how much you pay for venues and whether you're doing some marketing and advertising or not, and those costs. But what a lot of people forget is insurance, right? Insurance is very important. Now that it's not just a hobby and now that it's not just for you, you need to have insurance depending on your business. I'm not going to say everybody needs it. In my opinion, everybody needs it. And if you incorporate or you become a legitimate business in the state, you're going to need some kind of insurance. But typically, everybody needs some kind of insurance. But the people forget about that when they're factoring in costs. So if somebody's coming to you to buy a product or service and they're paying you for it, you're now operating as a business. You may not be incorporated. You may not have your LLC to protect you. It may just be you operating under your social security number as a sole proprietor. And what that means is you have all the responsibility for that product or service that you're selling. So you're responsible. You should have insurance for that. If something were to happen because somebody bought something that you sold them and they somehow some injuries were happened, you're responsible for that, right? So you should have insurance for that, and that's called liability insurance, right? So every business should have liability insurance to protect you for things that could happen, right? And we're a very litigious society. People will sue you for anything. So you want to think about liability insurance. You may choose not to buy liability insurance, but you want to at least think about it. Talk to an insurance agent, talk about it, and then make a decision whether you're gonna pay for it or not. It may not make sense for you, right? If you're providing a service and it's highly unlikely, if you send somebody some designs for their facility, you know, what's the likelihood that somebody's going to get hurt from those designs, right? If you plan an event for somebody, what's the likelihood that somebody's going to get hurt? That's what you have to evaluate, right? If you're doing some simple crafting, what's the likelihood that somebody could get hurt from your craft ideas or the product that you're providing? So you have to weigh that for yourself, but it's something you definitely need to think about. One of the things that a lot of people don't even know about, and if they do know about it, they forget about it, is key man insurance. Key man insurance is very critical for a small business, because oftentimes when you have a small business, especially if you're a sole proprietor, everything about that business is within you, right? It's in your head. How you do what you do, why you do what you do, all that's in your head. So what happens if something happens to you, right? How does the business survive if something happens to you? So as you grow, you want to think about key man insurance, okay? Because if somebody were looking to buy your company, and I've been there, I've bought a few companies, I've sold a few companies, key man insurance is a critical part of all of that. In fact, one of the flooring companies that I sold to a company up in Delaware, they not only insisted that I had key man insurance, but my head foreman I had to have insurance on him as well. Because if they bought the company and something happened to me, they'd be in big trouble, right? For a period of years, they had to make sure that I was available to do the handoff, right? We had manuals and policies and procedures, and that's fine. But they needed me to do the handoff. How do I do this? How do I do that? If something came up, they needed me to help them with that. They needed my foreman to help them manage what might happen that they can't control, right? So it's very important. And when you have a small company, as you grow, you want to think about that. If somebody were to hire you to do a design project, right? We're talking about a substantial project that may take months. What happens if something happens to you? You know, what they want to cover is their cost for finding another you, right? Whether that's putting the project out to bid again, whether it's putting an ad in the paper, or whatever it takes for them to find another you, they want to cover their, you know, they want to be protected. They want to make sure that they can afford that. So that's what key man insurance does. And again, something you want to think about, may not be critical to you at this point, but at some point, that might be something that you want to consider. So I've been talking for a while. I'm going to stop for a second and see if anybody has any questions about that. We covered some pretty serious topics right there. Any questions, Lisa?
I don't see anything in the chat.
Nothing in the chat. Boy, you guys are pretty quiet today.
Feel free to
All
unmute
right, I hope
yourself and interject.
no
This is
questions.
Alexis. This is Alexis. I don't know if it's a question, but it certainly is a comment. One thing that definitely resonated with me is, do you have time?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have time, but I do it anyway, which makes me crazy. I don't have time, but I do it. And I can't
means you
figure
love it.
out if I'm stupid or if I should keep doing it, because at some point it might be a fun source of income if and when I retire. But I don't have time. But if I don't lay the groundwork, it'll be harder for me to start it up later. So I keep doing it, but I don't have time.
Yeah, but it's great because what you're doing is you're taking the steps that are necessary to build that foundation, like you said, right? So at some point, you could actually hire somebody else to do this for you. Now, I know that's hard for you creatives to do that. That's probably the hardest. Outside of time, it's hard for you creatives to hand over what you do to somebody else because nobody can do it the way you do it. But
Amen.
you are building that foundation, and one day you might be able to say, number one, I'm leaving my day job because I like doing this better and I got everything in place and I think it can work. Or number two, I'm going to hire somebody else and they can run it and I'll just manage them. It takes me a lot less time to manage them than to actually do it all myself.
Well, that's a good idea. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm working with a woman. It's not a fun story, but I'm working with a woman whose husband built a business in Baltimore and unfortunately passed away last year. So what she has to decide, she has a full-time job and she's not very, it's not her thing. It was her husband's thing. So it wasn't something that she loved doing. But now she has to decide, am I going to jump in and take this over? Or am I going to hire somebody else to take this over? Right. So what she's weighing right now is, whether or not she's going to give up everything she has to run this business or hire somebody else. Now, it's still going to take time to manage somebody else running the business, but it takes less time to manage somebody else. But then some other things come into play, trust. Can you trust these people? Are these people going to do a good job? So there's options here, and hopefully I'm giving you a good foundation to help you build so that whether you decide to run these businesses yourself or hire somebody else, you'll have what you need. And again, Keyman Insurance would be a great thing for you to consider if somebody else is running your business, because you certainly want to make sure that they're protected. If something happens to that person, you would have an insurance policy that would allow your business, again, your business may have to stop for a while. You have to hire somebody else. It's going to take time. It's going to cost money. And to replace that person, you should have a policy for that. And that policy is your Keyman Insurance. All right, so now we're going to get into when. When is the right time? When do you want to do this? Right? You want to do this after you plan your launch. Everything needs a plan, right? In that business plan that you put together, it should explain when you're going to do this, how that launch is going to happen, right? So you don't want to start this thing without having a website, right? Websites are a must. You have to have a website these days. It's like the old days Yellow Pages. You have to have a website. The first place many people will look to verify whether you're real or not real is they look for a website. Right? You tell them I make these crafts and this is the name of my business. First thing they're going to do is try to find your website and see some pictures of some crafts that you make. Maybe some pictures of you because they want to know a little bit about you. Right? So websites are critical. Social media is critical. I meet so many people who don't really like social media, and that's fine. I get it. You might not like social media, but it's how people do business these days. They want to know you. Right? People ordering things online all the time, so they want to know as much as they can about you. They may never get a chance to meet you, but
I
they
have a
want to at
question,
least
please.
feel.
Could I
Yes,
ask a
please.
question, please? James,
Absolutely.
I have gotten a lot of pushback, website versus Instagram, and it makes me crazy because websites, I feel like, are the professional diploma, clean, whatever, you could have links, everything in it. Instagrams are fast, quick, and easy, but it requires a lot of work to keep that maintained. And I've been told
Yep.
over and over to do an Instagram. I have a website. I don't have
Yes.
time. I would do an Instagram if I thought it benefited me, but it seems to be very directed to either a certain generation or a certain age group. And I keep telling these people, I have a website. Everything is on my website. Go to my website. I don't want to have to recreate the wheel just because someone is used to doing the quick, 40-second blips on Instagram. So what's your opinion of that?
My opinion is you have to go where your customers need you. Again, if your customers are saying, and these may not be your customers, that's an evaluation you have to make, Alexis. There's a lot of people who say, well, you ought to be on Instagram, and they'll never buy from you, right? They're not your customers. If your true customers are telling you, people who will actually pay for your services are telling you, you ought to be on Instagram, then you ought to be on Instagram. Right? You ought to hire a high school student to run your Instagram post for you. And they will do it. There's high school students out here. There's college. When I was with the city, working with a small business resource center, I had Towson students, Morgan students, Coppin students who will gladly run your social media for you for very little money. I'm talking like lunch money, because they do it all the time. It comes second nature to them. So what you have to evaluate is, again, when I talked about knowing your customer, know your customer, because a lot of people, I'm not going to say waste time. Actually, I am going to say waste time. A lot of people waste time on Instagram and other social media with people who aren't their customers, right? You're gonna meet a lot of people on these social media outlets that say, "Oh, I wish you had blue ones. I wish you had red ones. And how come you don't do green ones?" Right? And you spend your time making these blue ones and red ones and green ones, and they don't buy them. Right? So you have to figure out who your customer is and what they need from you. And if it's social media, then you got to give them what they need, but they got to be your customers, or otherwise you're gonna waste a lot of time and money. Does that help, Alexis?
That's perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Also, Jim, I wanted to add, when you were talking about the students, you can also sometimes find free interns through the colleges that will do things like that to do your manage your social media, help you with your website, Instagram, all of that.
Mhm.
And, so sometimes you can find it for free because they need that internship.
Okay, well, you're absolutely right, because the people that are pushing me for Instagram are the dinky heads that don't even go to the website anyway, so I just can't. So, but I mean, it could visually help support my website. I just need to find the time to do it. So I can see where it meshes, but the people that are telling me, I can't even. So it's fine. Thank you.
Okay, and nor
Yeah, for your type of business, for a design service, things like that, like Instagram and things like that, are probably not the best use of your time and money. They're great for spur of the moment. Like if you had a flash sale on something, Instagram's awesome for that. You can post, people can see it, they can go right to wherever they need to go to buy from you. They can buy through Instagram, they can go directly to your website and buy. They're great for impulse purchases.
Mhm.
But for a design service, you've already taken the most important step, having that website, especially if you want to go after bigger and better projects. The people who are probably going to hire you are website people. Government, when people came to the city and wanted to offer their services, the first thing I saw it every day while I was there, if somebody wanted to bid on a certain project for the city, the first thing those folks in that office would do was go to their website and critique their website. Was it professionally done? Do these people look like professionals?
Mhm.
Right? So you've already taken the most important step.
Well, the only thing I
Jim?
could
Go ahead,
think
Alexis.
of, if you don't mind my asking, is I can see the value for my business since I do commercial healthcare and the whole gamut. Quick befores and afters, not so much DIYs. I don't need to be on Twitter and be self-photoed painting walls, but some befores and afters and snapshots seem to grab a certain generation, and I can drive them to my website, but I don't want to get too much into it, because you are correct. The professionals that want a professional don't want to go to Instagram. They want to go to a website. So,
Yeah,
but
I
thank
would
you.
agree with you there. I would agree with you there. Did you have something, Lisa?
Well, Nordine in the chat asked if even if you're not official, meaning for a website, does she need a website even if she's not official?
If you want to sell product, you need a website. Everybody needs a website. Again, people just want to know that you're real. And a website says you're real.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Social media is great, and if that's how you make your money, that's fine. But at some point, you want to go to the next level, right? If you ever wanted to get a business loan, I guarantee the bank's going to see if you have a website. If you want to do something for a municipality, the city, or the state, they want to know if you have a website. If you want to borrow money from one of the banks or CDFI, or if you want to apply for a grant, if you want to get in a contest, all these folks are going to see if you have a website. Again, Instagram's great, but they want to see, have you taken the steps that real businesses take by creating a website? You can get a website built for free from a lot of these, I don't have to name them all. You can get one done for free, but they want to see, have you taken that step at least? Right? So it's just one of those things that people associate with a real business. And you don't have to be incorporated or anything like that. But when you're ready to move to the next level past selling things on Instagram, people are going to expect you to have a website. So I hope that answers your question. So you have to decide, again, planning your launch, how you're going to plan, what platforms you're going to plan on, if you're on social media, how you're going to do this launch, if you're using your own website, right? So you want to put on your website, we're introducing this bit, start your website, and put on there, we're going to launch on this date. Give people time to warm up to it, right? Give people time to get ready, right? So you want to, if you're using Instagram or some other social media, you want to say, look, I'm launching on this date next month. Get ready, and keep telling them. Do a countdown, tell them it's coming, so that people can be ready. Build up that anticipation so that they're looking for you. Don't just pop up one day and say, I'm here, right? You catch people off guard, takes them a while to warm up to you. And all of that time, the clock's ticking and you're losing money, right? So give them time to get ready. So plan your launch and do it the right way with the right tools. Number 2 is educate yourself. Educate like you're doing today with the Women's Center, right? These are the things that you ought to do to get ready. This is how you get ready to launch your business. So after you educate yourself, you can launch this business. You want to go to the Women's Center, the SBA has classes, SBDC, different people around town have different free and low cost classes that you can take. And that's in your part of your first steps. Educate yourself. You can go on YouTube and take all kinds of classes. You can learn almost everything you want to learn on YouTube, right? So you need to find out what the best practice is for businesses like yours. Talk to people. What I try to do when I mentor folks who are in a space that I'm not familiar with, and I'm familiar with a lot of spaces, but I don't know everything. So what I will do, if you came to me and wanted to open up a restaurant, what I do is I connect you with a few people who own restaurants, who have been in the restaurant space for a long time and can answer all your questions about restaurants, right? So if that's a space you want to be in, find somebody who's doing it. Because just like this presentation, this workshop, where I'm sharing a lot of information that you may not have known or may not have thought of, you might actually speak to somebody who's doing what you're doing. And you might say, you know what? I don't know if I really want to do this anymore. That's not what I thought it was. All right. And that's why I try to encourage people to actually do what it is. I love people like yourself who are going from a hobby to a side hustle, and then hopefully one day from a side hustle to a formal business, because you've done it. You've been there. You know exactly what it takes, right? You know all the steps. You're not just showing up one day and say, hey, I got some extra money. Let me open up this design business because I think designing might be fun. right? You know exactly what it takes. This is what you do. So that's awesome that you're able to do that. You have that education already. And the other thing is not just education on your craft or what it is that you're doing, but educate yourself on what laws might govern the space that you're in. Right? If you're a contractor, you might need a contractor's license. Right? If you're a designer, in some instances, you might need a contractor's license because the work will be done on somebody's property, and you might need a license for that. If you're a realtor, you might need a realtor's license, right? You need licenses to do different things. Depending on how, again, those tools and how you're going to sell your product that we talked about, you might need a trader's license, right? Through the city. You might need a license through the state. If you want to sell snow cones on the sidewalk, you need a sidewalk permit, right? That's a permit, that's a license. If you want to sell at the farmer's market, you need a street vendor's license, right? If you want to sell it at an event like AFRAM or one of the big events around town, you need a special event permit, right? So you need to educate yourself on those things that you may not have thought of right now, but you would need when it comes to somebody paying you for your product or your service. And another thing I want to mention here again, like I did before, is insurance. In order for you to be a part of a lot of these options that I just mentioned, like the farmer's market or somebody's bazaar, even churches sometimes require you to have insurance to be in these places. Because what happens if you're moving your stuff in and you put a hole in the wall, right? Or somebody grabs something off your table, spills a product or drop something off your table and somebody slips and falls, right? Somebody's got to pay for that. Somebody's got to pay for the injury. Somebody's got to pay for the damage. So insurance, again, is an important piece to all of this. Because there's certain places you just can't go without having insurance, no matter what you're doing, whether you're providing a service or you're creating a product. People want to know that they're protected. You need to know that you're protected. So number 3, how to sell, right? After you learn how to sell, you can launch your product. Learn how to sell. I don't know how many people have great products, great services, but they can't sell. They don't know how to sell to people. Or you ask them what they're doing and it takes 30 minutes for them to explain what you're doing. You ought to be able to say what you do and how you do and who you are very quick. It's called the elevator pitch, right? Practice it. Be able to, when anybody asks you, what do? You have to be able to tell them quickly what it is that you do and how you do. All right, so practice that. Learn how to sell. There's some great books out there. There's some great tools. Again, YouTube. All around town, Small Business Center, MC, Women's Center, SBA, SBDC. These folks have classes that you can take to learn how to sell. You need to figure out which ones these you're going to take and when. Be a part of one of those classes and learn how to sell. All right. And then number 4, pick a date. All right. Again, part of your launch is deciding when exactly you're going to start or restart. Pick a date. Have your website ready to go. Let people know when it's coming. 30 days, we're going to relaunch this thing. You know, in 30 days, we're going to start. You know, get it out there. Get people looking for you, and then go. And I wish you all the best. So that wraps it up. We're going to do some questions. Anybody else have any questions? We got some time here. If anybody has any questions at all.
When did you say the next seminar was and what was it for?
The next seminar is going to be how to turn your side hustle. So today we went from hobby to side hustle. The next one is going to be how to turn your side hustle into a business. All right. And Lisa, do you have a date for that?
Yes, May 13th.
Thank you.
May 13th.
And
All
yeah,
right, we're going to
Ann
talk
told
about
me May
turning.
13th, so that's the day.
Mhm. I
All
put it in
right,
the
so-
chat for the 13th. Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Now I can't wait to hear about that, what Jim is going to teach, because I don't know if you said this and I missed it, but your hustle, you earn you earn some revenue. So does that mean that should you register your hustle business well, that's what you're going to talk about.
That's what we're gonna talk
The
about,
benefits
right?
of keeping it as a hustle, and what does that mean for the IRS? Is that legal?
Right,
What?
right,
So-
right. These are all the things that come up when it's time to decide whether you want to turn your side hustle into a business. Do
Right.
you want to be
Yeah.
completely formal? Do you want to be a sole proprietor? Do you want to be an LLC? We're going to get into the differences between LLCs and C Corp and S Corp. All your options in terms of incorporating or not. Right? We're going to get into all of that with the next session. So you want to keep your eyes out for that. May 13th. We'll do it again at lunchtime. And if you have any questions around that, you can reach out to Ann or Lisa or myself, and we'll help you with that.
Mm.
And Alexis,
Any other questions?
oh, I was just gonna mention another class that we have coming up that kind of pertains to what Alexis was talking about. I think it's May, we just changed the date, May 26th. It's about building or using your Facebook and Instagram for
Mhm.
your business. So
Nice.
can't think of the exact title right now because I think it's building your Facebook and Instagram following or something like that for your small business. So I put our website in the chat. So if you want to check that out, it's on our website.
Awesome, awesome. And I got a bunch of them. I got a bunch of workshops that
I
I'm
know,
gonna be
and
doing
Ann
with
has
the
a bunch of
women's center.
workshops. So come together and we'll do them together. So
Absolutely, looking
Absolutely.
forward
all
to
these
it.
different places. That's
somewhere
what
in
Ann
the-
and I try to do.
Yeah, I mentioned in the presentation something called a business model canvas, right? So I'm going to be doing a workshop on business model canvases.
Look,
So
Jim,
look
you
out
read
for
my
that one.
mind. You read my mind. I
Okay.
wrote it down here to ask you about teaching that class. Got it right here on my
Yeah.
notes. Isn't that something?
All we got to do is pick a date.
All right, sounds great.
Happy to do that. I do that one for, I developed that one for the folks at UMBC in their master's class. But I'm gonna make it simple for folks who are not getting their master's in business. So it's like this one. It's gonna be very easy to understand. It's gonna be plenty of time for people to ask questions, and it's a lot to learn, and it's very useful.
Great. And so we can partner on that if you like and have Jim.
Absolutely.
That's a great one.
Yeah, all we need is
Because
a
I'm
date.
pretty
So-
sure, I just want
Go
to,
ahead.
I'm pretty sure that, like Jim just said, I mean, some people are getting an extended education in business concepts, but honestly, business owners have to be more than just the expert in, the services they provide. You almost have to be very knowledgeable. I'm not saying you got to be an expert, but you got to be very knowledgeable about business practices if you want your business to survive. So take advantage of
Right.
these free. Oh, I shouldn't say free because they're really not free, but no cost to you right now. No cost to out of your pocket.
Right.
These,
Right.
these services.
Just cost you some time, cost you 60 minutes out your day.
That's right.
Out of your 1440, you spend 60 of them with us, and we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, so now it's time for a test,
Ooh.
right? Everybody get ready. I want to hear from all of you. Okay, this is my test that I have at the end of every one of my workshops. I need to know what you learned today that you didn't know before the workshop started, right? Pick one thing. We have a small group, so this shouldn't be hard. Typically, when we have 20, 30 people, it gets difficult because you can't duplicate it, right? So whatever somebody else says, you can't say, oh yeah, I learned that too.
Well, can I go
Gotta be
first? This
something
Yvette. Can I go first?
Oh, you trying to cheat, Yvette?
Yes.
Haven't heard from you all day. Now you trying to jump to the front of the line?
Yes.
All right, Yvette, you can go first.
Okay, one interesting thing I learned today was TAN. Was it TAN? Or is it, I'm
TAM.
sorry. That's that key insurance that I would need, right? Is that two different
Oh,
things
key
you're
man
talking about?
insurance. Okay,
Yes.
Key Man Insurance. is-
Key
okay,
Man
yeah.
Insurance. Yes, I never thought about that, especially when my daughter and I started our business and we were partners within that business and she passed away. And now, like you say, what happens, me moving forward, you know, 'cause she and I was the brainchild of the business. So what happens if something happens to me?
Right,
And how do I put
right.
that in place? And if I am working, like you say, on this big project, because I'm thinking big, this big project and something happens to me, someone has to finish that. So I found that to be very
Exactly.
interesting for me today. That's what I learned.
Thank you for that, Yvette, because that is probably the most important thing I said today. Because a lot of people, if you don't have a partner already, at some point you may decide to have a partner, whether it's a formal partner in the business or you're partnering with another company. Having Key Man Insurance is critical because you guys, through the city, we used to partner people up to bid on these large contracts, like with Whiting Turner and some of the big contractors throughout the city, right? And what happens if something happens to the other partner? Right? Are you just out? You just lose the contract, you can't fulfill your promise, right? You need to have that Key Man Insurance to find somebody else to step in, to have that money to be able to hire another partner to do whatever it is that you guys are moving forward with. So Key Man Insurance is very critical. All right, so who's next? Who else wants to say something that they learned today? Anybody? Don't let me have to
I'll
pick on
go.
somebody.
I'll go.
Okay, Lakeisha.
So the first thing I learned is that I need to set the reminders on my phone because I was late. So I missed half of the workshop. So I need to update my reminders. But the one thing that I did think that was very interesting is that you need your website in place before you launch.
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't. I hustled backwards. I did everything before I put all the things. I did everything on the front end and then had to go back and do all the back end work. So I
Yeah,
launched and
that's
then I had to
critical.
do a website. I had to do a business plan. I had to do so I did everything backwards. So I'm learning how to kind of catch up and do all the back end business stuff and make it linked to my business. But the one thing that I do, that I did learn was that the website is crucial and it has to be a very well done website.
Yeah, if you're gonna do it right, because people are gonna judge you on it. They form an impression based on your website, you know, right or wrong. That's all they know of you right now. Your name shows up on a piece of paper or on Facebook or something. They want to see who you are. And your website is going to show them who you are, or as best they can get interpretation of who you are. You always want to put your best foot forward. So Lakeisha, while we have you, can you explain to us what you're trying to do, what business you have?
Sure. So I'm a baker. My business is Kiki's Cuisine. You actually judged me in the Baltimore Means business
Okay,
cohort. Yeah.
okay,
So
nice,
yeah, so I
nice.
have a bakery. Yeah, I do gourmet desserts. My specialty is the navy bean pie.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, yep. So that's what I do. And I'm a
Okay,
self-taught baker.
great. I hope you learned something today.
I did.
Great, thank you. All right, so who you have left? Alexis, anything you learned new today? I know you're probably a little more experienced than some others that are here. But did you learn anything new today? Is Alexis still with us?
Yes, sorry, I forgot to unmute. Yes, it didn't occur to me to even consider a business plan for a side hustle. I was just organically being creative in random directions, and that that caught my attention. So I wasn't paying
Great.
attention to that.
Great. Yeah, you always need a business plan because we talked about possibly you hiring somebody to run the business for you.
Right,
So your business plan would show them how to run that business for you.
right.
All right, great, great. Thank you. Thank you. Is that everybody?
That's everyone.
All right. Well, I thank you guys for joining us today. You could have been
Thank
anywhere
you.
and you decided to spend your lunch hour with us. we
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you so much. Thank you so
Thank you.
much,
Thank
Jim.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jim.
Thanks,
Thank
Jim.
All
you
right.
all.
Guys, have a great day.
Have
All
a
right,
See
Thanks,
you soon
Ann.
at the next
Okay.
workshop.
next
Bye-bye.
month.
okay.
All right, bye-bye.
See you. Feel better, Ann.
Thank you.
Yeah, feel
I feel
better.
better once I finish that report. That's when I'm gonna feel better.
That's right. I'll be in touch with you next week about hooking up with Jim for the next workshop.
Okay.
Yeah, I got plenty of them. You guys tell me what you want to do. I got
Woo-hoo, we
plenty.
You
love
should
it.
send us, Jim, your repertoire,
list.
your listing.
Okay,
Yeah.
all
You
right.
want to do that?
You got it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll
Thank
do
you.
that. All right, guys.
Thank
Yep,
you,
bye.
guys. I appreciate you.
Have a good day.
All right, bye-bye. Jeez.